Greetings, Dragon Ball fans, and welcome to the sixth part of this series, What If Vegeta Killed Gohan? In the last part, not wanting to risk what he had found, the much older Gohan agreed to travel to the past to try and save the Z-Fighters, if, and only if, those he holds dearest come too. Once there, he rather coldly dispatched of both Cold and Cooler, and future Bulma then proceeded to wreck everyone's cheery reunion with dire news of their future. Gohan, of course, got to meet and finally say a proper goodbye to his mum. Hopefully, he can come to some sort of terms with some of the other hallucinations that plagued him in his lone half-decade in the time chamber before the Earth of the Namekian child, who was neither given nor chose the name Akamu until he found himself rather violently ejected from that chamber. Before we rejoin our heroes amid the 25th World Martial Arts Tournament, I'd like to give a shout-out to Steve Des, who kindly made a small review video of this equally small channel over the Christmas break. You can check out his channel and his what-ifs in the link below. But now, on with the show. Back in the arena, after deflecting mercenary Tao's Dodonpa, and with the blessing of her sensei, Videl lets rip with a Kamehameha in response. The stunned Tao Pai Pai takes the blast head-on and is promptly thrown from the ring, smashing into the walls. After the debris settles, he gets up, smiles, if not a bit creepily, and stalks off, now eliminated from the tournament. Videl, however, is elated. She's been training hard in preparation for the tournament and is determined to honor her late father, the hero of Orange City, and former World Martial Arts champion, Hercule Satan. Hercule Satan? I think we'll go with Satan. His actions and ensuing death during the evacuation in the wake of Mount Paozu's rather unexpected eruption all those years ago has propelled his fame to new heights. She has to measure up somehow. Videl has of course been a student of the West City's now famous Song School since she was a recently orphaned 11-year-old girl. She has learned under a variety of teachers and trained under a variety of martial arts masters. While she was probably not their first student, it didn't take long for the determined girl from Orange City to work her way up to the top. The power scaling likely gets a bit weird here, as she's been key training with the likes of Korin, Akamu, Akujin even, and finally Master Gohan himself, for at least 7 years now. Each one of those a sizable step above the previous in terms of raw ki output. And this isn't a scrawny wisp of a Gohan that was ejected from the time chamber almost a decade ago. He's been hard-working and eating as healthily as possible in this post-android world. So, whatever her capabilities are, it's certainly enough to defeat the aged mercenary, but ultimately not enough to really pique their other interests beyond a cursory glance at their concealed kilometer. That honor belongs to the now grown-up-looking Akujin, the warrior-class Namekian grandson of Kami. The larger of the two pale, antennaless, not-quite Namekians, who calls himself only Kibito, and Akujin both step up to the platform. They stare across at each other, Akujin at least attempting to size up this enigmatic and kinda weird-feeling Kibito fellow. The Kai, however, just stands there calmly with his hands behind his back, as Akumu positions himself to attack. He can feel that there's something off about this guy, but he can't quite figure it out. Giving up on his mental probing, Akujin asks Kibito just what he's doing. Why isn't his guard up? Kibito, however, just stares at him, rather serenely. That is at least until Akujin surges forward, stopping right in front of the now slightly wide-eyed Kai. He slowly punches towards the man, connecting gently. "Take this seriously," he says, looking eye to eye at the big man. Kibito steps away from Akujin and starts moving oddly. Is he preparing himself? Akujin looks over to Akumu and Gohan to see if they've seen these strange movements as well. Seeing that they have, he then charges in to attack. Well, at least he tries to. He finds that he cannot move at all. He starts pushing his ki up bit by bit to strain against this trap. That little white guy had mentioned something like this to them when they were back in the past. Edging up higher and higher, he can still see no sign of strain on the big pink man's face. Finally growing a little impatient, Akujin mutters something to himself and promptly erupts in a brilliant red flare of energy. He smiles as he sees Kibito stagger slightly, clearly struggling to hold him in place. Still unable to break free, though, he pushes still higher. The crowd is certainly lapping this up. They wanted fireworks, didn't they? They're certainly getting more than they saw in the junior division. Gohan senses movement from Tao and his muscle-bound companion, Spopovich, was it? Their energy has shifted, as if they're going to attack. He moves to put a stop to this, but he himself is stopped when the smaller, pale, not-quite Namekian touches his arm. The white-haired little man kindly asks Master Gohan to please let this happen. He won't be harmed. You have my promise. Gohan stares down at this, what was it, Shin? Then he sees Tao and that other branded member of the Majin school rushing out into the arena. The big man grabs a hold of the struggling but already immobile Akujin as Tao shoves something into his side. Pulling away from Shin, Gohan turns to intervene, but finds his feet similarly stuck to the ground. He looks back down coldly at the Kai as his hair flickers and crackles, shifting smoothly to a dull golden green. With this, Shin staggers back as Gohan then turns and rips his feet from the ground, taking chunks of tile and dirt with him. He stops again when he finds Akumu standing in his path. The Namekian asks his master to wait. There is something happening here. As they lock eyes, Gohan is overcome with a sense of betrayal. Et tu, Akumu? He thinks to himself. A flash of Piccolo and Kami laughing down at him flickers through his mind. Stunned for only a moment, though, he shakes his head and decides that no, he will trust this man, his oldest friend. When Gohan relaxes just a bit, he instantly feels the trap release as Shin then stands up properly. He looks over to see Tao and Spopovich flying up and away from the arena. Shin says that they now need to follow them, discreetly, while Kibito will tend to the now unconscious Akujin. Gohan takes a moment to look over at the crumpled form of the Namekian, then to Akumu, and then to a very worried Bulma out in the stands. As they fly off, his three best students run out and fly up after them, slower but quite determined, the tournament outcome long forgotten. As they cruise along, Shin asks Gohan why Tao didn't react to Gohan's rather obvious burst of power. They're keyed into it after all. But Gohan ignores the question and instead demands that Shin explain himself, now. The Kai relents and tells them about the wizard Bibidi, the clone Babidi, and the impending rampage of Majin Buu. On discovering that this Shin guy is in fact not just a Kai, but the highest one at that, Gohan is, well, let's say he's not at all pleased. He moves slightly away from this man, or being at least, as he feels a wave of something creeping over him. Disdain at the very least. No, pretty sure that's outright hatred. Yes, he knows he hates these Kais, wading in when they feel like it and ignoring you the rest of the time. What are they even for? If Akumu hadn't stood in his way, none of this would be happening. They approach the spot where Tao and Spopovich have landed, and they hide, watching the two hand over the energy canister to the diminutive little wizard. Tao then says something to Dabura and motions back, towards the onlookers. With a nod from Babidi, Dabura, Tao, and Spopovich fly over towards them, just in time to meet the orange and blue-clad Son students, who place themselves between their masters and the approaching Majins. Videl effortlessly kicks the blindly attacking Spopovich over to another student and then turns to face Tao once again. Her attention is pulled away, however, as her fellow student and budding boyfriend starts to turn to stone, screaming. With Tao now forgotten, Videl bursts into a deep red aura and rushes straight at Dabura. Ooh, that rhymes. Her fists glowing with energy. Her attack is cut short, though, when Gohan appears in front of her and calls out to stop. He then turns to face the Demon King, but he feels something wet sliding across his neck. As his vision fades, he sees his best student falling out of the sky with him, Grey Rock, freezing her young, terrified face mid-scream. His thoughts start to fade, though, waiting for, dreading, the sound of shattering stone. Kibito arrives with Akujin to join Akumu in staring at the petrified Gohan and Videl, as the diminutive Moki awkwardly sets them down on the ground. Akumu immediately demands that Kibito heal Gohan, Sharp, and Miss Satan, as Dabura floats there, smiling down at them. Babidi has by now told him to stop petrifying people, as they need more energy, a lot more. He turns and flies off with Tao, disappearing into the ship. Sadly, Kibito cannot cure demon magic, so they need to venture in and not only defeat the Demon King, but kill him outright. Seeing the ship entrance left open, Akumu, Akujin, Shin, and Kibito fly down to investigate. As they are about to enter, they look up to see Goku and Jinbei floating above them, glancing wide-eyed at the petrified forms of their father and fellow students. Akumu sternly tells these boys that this is not playtime. They glance at each other, then back at their frozen father, and nod firmly before descending to join the group. Shin then tells Kibito to stay here and watch over those statues as they go in to face who or whatever lies within. Once inside, I think it's fair to say that Pui Pui gets dealt with rather quickly, let's say by Akujin, while a black-haired Goku punches a strangely frightened Tao Pai Pai into a wall, knocking him out quickly. The less thoughtful Jinbei struggles a bit against Yakon, but accidentally blows him up with a burst of Kaioken on top of his long-since perfected Super Saiyan Grade 4. Akumu then moves in to destroy Dabura if he doesn't immediately release the others from their statue form. Unfortunately, Babidi has by now taken notice of this being's somewhat excessive power. He can see Akumu's clear advantage over Dabura, despite the dial barely even twitching. While he marvels at the kind of control needed to accomplish this, he also instructs Dabura to try and draw some of that energy out. In an attempt to both distract and disrupt this weirdly powerful opponent, Dabura tries to petrify Akujin. Having seen this trick before, however, Akumu is having none of it. Does anger count as disruption? With a pulse of red, Akumu moves to and straight through Dabura, eviscerating the once proud Demon King, and leaving his bits pretty much everywhere. The momentary spike of energy doesn't provide much for Buu, though, but the impact on the ship causes the walls to fracture, and the entire ship shudders violently. Gohan wakes up with a start as the ground shudders around him. He sees Kibito caring for the gasping Videl and Sharpener. The scared but determined Moki wants to accompany him into the ship, but Gohan instructs his student to stay here and protect his friends. As Gohan approaches the battle, Babidi takes notice of his damaged mind. The juicy, delicious rage aimed squarely at the Kais, and that slumbering resentment for the green-skinned ones. What did they do? Did they abandon him? Oh well, who is Babidi to argue with such a boon? The wizard takes his time crafting the Majin symbol to break this man's tightly wound, razor-thin control, also hoping to release whatever energy he has hidden away for the sphere and Majin Buu to absorb. As Gohan enters the chamber with the others in the ship, the Majin control finally takes hold. It quickly succeeds in breaking what little control he has. Babidi barely has the time to see the Killy dial needling, then breaking as Gohan's ki is released in concussive waves. The waves of energy grind up the ship and the ground around it, sending everyone flying away. A confused and seething with rage Majin Gohan turns on the closest target of that rage, while continuing to bathe the area in uncontrolled waves of energy. Buu's cage drinks in the overwhelming ki, washing past it, and before Gohan even reaches the terrified little Kai, the sphere bursts open, releasing the pink mist upon the world. Once congealed, Babidi demands that Buu kill everyone, so he dutifully charges in to fight the very distracted Akumu, Akujin, Goku, and Jinbei. Kibito meanwhile tries to pull Gohan off Shin, but gets batted away as the half-Saiyan's hair flickers and pulses from black to golden green and back, arcs of electricity ripping up the ground around him with each pulse of light. Ooh, I wonder what that is. Gohan continues to throw Shin around, babbling almost incoherently about the past, the Kai's uselessness, and other time chamber and starvation-induced hallucinations he now recalls as undeniably real. He's going to enjoy this, the ultimate Kai at his feet, awaiting his righteous judgment. Between these halting attacks from Gohan, Shin can see that the others are struggling against Majin Buu. He manages to telepathically tell both Akumu and Akujin to instead focus on the Majin, and not to worry about him or Gohan. With his worries somewhat pushed away, Akumu starts testing this blob, both physically and mentally. It soon becomes apparent that Buu isn't exactly running on all cylinders, mentally speaking, so Akumu starts talking to Buu, almost friendly, while Babidi is constantly, frantically yelling to kill them all. Picking up on this tack, Akujin and the more wary Goku join Akumu in chatting to this somewhat innocent Buu, gently goading him into aiming his anger at the true source of his frustration, Babidi. The more happy-go-lucky Jinbei isn't much use in this carefully aimed, casual-sounding conversation, but he does his best. And Majin Buu is eating it up, so to speak. and is getting more and more confused and distracted by Babidi's incessant and constant yammering on, until finally Buu breaks away from what is little more than a sparring match at this point. He lands in front of Babidi, seething with anger. Before the wizard clone can react, he is quickly dispatched. Now free from the controlling influence, however, Buu starts yelling and screaming and stomping around, blowing out huge amounts of steam. It, of course, culminates in the formation of the gaunt, gray-skinned, evil Buu. Maybe now is their chance to finish off these two now slightly weaker Buus. Will they manage to wrap things up quickly, or will the raging, incoherent Majin Gohan cause more trouble for them? Find out next time on Dragon Ball, What If Vegeta Killed Gohan?